Okay, so just a little bit about me and why I'm here talking to you about this particular one. I've actually worked around PMOs for over 20 years. Not only am I a director of PMO Learning, also director and co-founder of House of PMO, but I've also worked within project management recruitment for a number of years as well, which has led me to do quite a lot of things like career coaching for people in PMOs. And, so that's, I suppose, why I got such a good handle on this particular subject. So there's probably, and no question that I can't answer. So please do feel free. And also, obviously, talk a lot around PMO stuff, very passionate about it. And so that's me. And so hopefully, you'll get some insights today that you'll be able to take away and to have what you want to do. So just a little about PMO Learning. We started, I think it's probably now in 2017. So to purposely to work specifically with training and development for people that are working within PMO. I think we're the only ones, to be fair. I know it's very niche, but Eileen and I, both co-founders, it is the area that we are particularly interested and excited about. Yes, project management, big subject, lots of talk about project managers and people that actually deliver projects. But for us, it's the PMO where we get the most excited about, because of the diversity of what the PMO is, and the kind of PMOs that you'll find within organizations, and how the variety of different types of PMOs that exist. It's just a very interesting field where you can pretty much go wherever you want to go with it. So hopefully you'll get a flavor for the this is about how to get into a PMO role, and kind of things that you need to consider. So we've got a mix of people. So some of the people have already been working within this space. Some of the, it's great. We've got project manager as well. So this is going to be an interesting one. So this is about how to get started in a PMO role. So what I've done is very much looked at the kind of entry levels. I don't know how applicable it's going to be for some of you, but it's about, when you first get started in PMO, it tends to be at the kind of entry level type roles, and that's where we're going to be focusing today. We will also obviously start to look at some of the courses to consider, and the courses that we'll be discussing primarily on this session are about the kind of entry level. But again, if you've got any more specific questions around other courses, we'll be able to pick those up as well. And we're also going to look at that career path, because the career path, as I said, with PMO, you can go lots of places, and we'll just give you some insights on where you could go, and there's some thinking behind that. So let's kick off. So we've got lunch. It's lunch and learn. So how to get started. So generally, we look at the entry level roles. So for a lot of people, PMO, in the understanding of what it is about supporting project program or portfolio managers and their teams in the administrative and secretariat aspects. And that is the entry level role, and how to, to become, part of a PMO team. That's generally how most people, when they're starting from minimal experience, they come into the PMO at that level. Now, the interesting thing for some of you that have already, been working before in different roles, you can obviously come into PMO at slightly different levels. But ultimately, the bottom line is with PMOs, regardless of what level they are very much a supporting role. We support project and program and portfolio management within an organization. And it's because you've got those different levels of project, program and portfolio that's what makes the role different depending on what kind of role that you're doing. Yeah, so it's about, at project level, it's considered to be the entry level, because projects, when you're supporting a project, it just tends to be project manager and a project team. It's a nice little, scenario to be in. When you start to look at becoming, working in PMOs that are supporting programs, that's where you're getting a lot more activities, a lot more projects that you're supporting. And then ultimately at portfolio level, it's looking at all the projects and programs that exist in an organization. So you can see that when we start to talk about, getting into a PMO role, it really does depend on, where you're coming from, and where you think that your skill sets are going to fit in terms of those 3 levels. That's why when we talk about the entry level, is for most people, they get started by supporting at that project level. Okay. So Suzanne's already got a question. How do you make the distinction between PMO support and becoming just another admin support? We will definitely pick that up, Suzanne, because what we're going to show you is what the role entails and how the roles and responsibilities sit. So you'll be able to see, very much the difference between, any kind of business administration role versus a project or PMO type role. So that's what we're doing. These are roles that are about supporting project, program and portfolio management. And generally, when you start to come into these kind of roles, there are a couple of things that you have to understand. And these are the very, 2 basics. You have to understand project management. If you're coming into a role where you're going to be supporting projects and programs and portfolios, you have to understand what it is that is happening at those project, programs and portfolio levels. So it's that basic understanding when you first start at that entry level type role. But also it's about understanding what's expected of you. Now, again, because of the variations in different types of PMOs, it also means that an organization, when it suits it has a particular PMO, the roles and responsibilities tend to change or differ slightly depending on what organization you're working within. So that's the beauty of it, or sometimes the frustration of it, is that you're never quite sure, well, what kind of PMO is it, and what kind of, what's the expectation of me coming in and doing that kind of project PMO administration role. So again, we'll have a look during this our time together just at what the kind of expectations of what these roles are actually doing. So before we get into some of that, I just want to give you a typical day. So for people that are either not, never worked in this role before, or even the ones that are currently, you'll probably look at this and you'll see, yeah, okay, that looks like a busy day for somebody, and it is. Okay, it's to illustration purposes, it is a busy day, but these are the kind of things that people are doing when they're working within a PMO administrative supporting role. So you can see that they're, from these kind of things, is that you can be doing that kind of secretariat type support stuff, which is things around meetings and that kind of stuff. You can see on that second one about the technical spec, it's got documentation formatting type work that goes on. So very PC based type stuff. We've got the timesheeting type things, that's where the data and reporting starts to come in. And then you've got a lunch and learn. So, again, with the PMO administrator role, it's all about continuing to learn and to understand what's going on and how does your organization do things. Again, with the afternoon is a lot of meetings on projects, and that's where a PMO administrator tends to spend a lot of their time. It's being able to be, generally this role is about being the central point of contact within a project. So if you imagine you're supporting the project manager and their team, you're very much that person that kind of knows what's going on. And you generally pick up all of these kind of things from all the reports that you look at, all the meetings that you attend, all the documents that you're formatting and registering. So it is a very much a central point of contact. And you tend to be that person where, the title there, it's administration. A good administrator is somebody that does know what's happening, very well organized, and essentially likes to be in the thick of it. So again, just giving you a general overview, but it's also from people that, who are thinking about coming into a PMO role, or indeed a project management role of any kind. You're thinking about, well, what is it that I've already got that makes my, as a transferable types of knowledge, skills and behaviors that are going to make me a good fit for this kind of role? And coming back to that question from Suzanne about what's the distinction between the two of them, they're very close up to a certain point. Administration skills, are obviously applicable both in projects and business and finance and any other department within an organization. But the difference is the environment that you're working within is that project environment. And that there are set ways of doing things, and there are methods and frameworks and processes and procedures to follow. And it's that variation. But ultimately, if you're a good administrator, the project management stuff can be learnt. Nobody, it's as long as you have the good organizational skills and the people interaction, relationship building type skills and the PC skills, it is just a case of trying to understand how you apply your existing knowledge, skills and behaviors to these individual settings. So, sometimes I think when people look at the profession of project management and PMO, it can feel very cliquey, perhaps for the language that's used or the way explained in a job advert or something like that. But ultimately, when you scratch the surface, it isn't that different. It is just about supporting people to allow them to be able to deliver and do what they're trying to do successfully, which often means that there are a lot of kind of ad hoc stuff that happens. And ultimately, a PMO administrator is that person that is able to, oh, I've got a bit of a curveball thrown into me because there's a deadline. There's a project deadline. I've got to drop this stuff, pick this one up, get this one over the line. So it's very much a busy, people-orientated role. If we look formally at what is considered to be the role of a PMO administrator, then this is taken from the House of PMO's competency framework. So basically, a competency framework lays out exactly what you need to know in order to be able to perform a role competently. And within that competency framework are role profiles. And this is just the entry level one. I'll show you there are 3 other roles and we will touch on those as well. But for a PMO administrator role, you can see here that these are what are considered to be the role. And you'll see there that, yes, number 1, quite a lot of stuff that is all lumped together, which is that administrative service. But again, the other things between 2 and 5 are where the project management knowledge comes into play. These are how you use your existing administration skills put together with your project management knowledge. And that's how that job differs from just becoming another admin support person. So there's the differentiation. So when we look at, getting into a role like this, these are, considered to be, probably the 5 things that you have to think about if you, wanting to either get into or if you're wanting to progress in a PMO role. So there's the obvious things. We're a training company and we're going to talk to you about the training options, but you can see there that there's a recommendation for the first 2, and I will go into a little bit more detail about those 2. But there is certification-based training to support you in your knowledge. So this is what we were talking about where, to understand and to do well in a role in PMO, there's 2 things you need to understand. Is the project management side. So what is project management, but also what is the expectation of you coming into that role and what are you expected and required to do, in your supporting activities. So there is, training there that is very specific to the PMO stuff. There's also the non-cert stuff that you can get anywhere, and those are going to be things that touch on different areas of perhaps it's project management stuff, which for example, benefits management or assurance. But it could also be non-cert training, which is about you becoming more confident in, we've said that you take part in a lot of meetings. One of the things that I remember doing earlier on in my career is learning how to take meeting minutes, because you're expected to be in a lot of meetings and nobody actually ever teaches you how to take effective meeting minutes. So there's a lot of other things that you can be doing skill-wise that actually isn't a certificate course that comes with a badge and all that kind of stuff, but is good training that's going to help you to develop your skills. There's obviously things that you can do around self-assessment, which is a session for another day. But again, those kind of self-assessments allow you to understand, well, this is what I've got. But, well, look, actually, these are all the other things that I probably need to be looking into that, I've got some gaps in my knowledge here. So that's what self-assessments can do to help you try to get, more confident and more experienced in your role. There's obviously the more informal learning, of which, it's things like this. It's going to conferences, it's listening to webinars, it's getting involved in some of the LinkedIn learning type stuff, or, there's reading a book or looking at websites, all of that kind of good stuff, should be, if you're wanting to make a go of having a career in PMO, a lot of the onus is on you. Yes, you'll be picking up things day to day through the project, but actually when it happens and there's stuff that's going on and things that are being talked about, so actually I don't really know enough about this. Yes, I can ask colleagues and peers in the organization, but actually it's really up to me to do some reading around subjects as well. And then of course you've got that on the job development, and I'll hold my hands up. When I first started doing the role around PMOs, I started way back, and that was the vast majority of my development came from being on the job and actually doing it. Is that ability to, yes, you're taking direction from project managers, the people that you're supporting and the teams that you're working with it. You're also taking, help from managers and also your peers that might be working in a similar role. But it also with things like on the job development, it is about, being able to get comfortable in the role and then knowing when to start to push and think, yeah, okay, I'm ready to take on something else. And one of the things that I found very much in early in my career is that you get a lot of opportunities when it comes through how you work with your initial manager. So from your project manager, when you first start working with them, it's about building trust with these people. And it's when they start to really trust you, but they start to give you more opportunities to get involved in some of the other aspects that are happening in the project. So it's a prime example of, how to think about your development is not just about training courses. It can come through opportunity when you're actually working on the job. And also things that are mixed in there is about, well, having the confidence to try new things and, not being afraid to, yeah, you might muck up once or twice, but actually that's how we all learn. So it's a combination of things that we need, acquiring those skills and knowledge that are really going to help us get into that PMO role. So we talked about the courses to consider, and there's two, and the main one that's really picked up over the last 18 months is this one from the House of PMO, because it is very, very targeted, as you can see. It's for PMO administrators. You'll also be interested, if you're already an administrator, that there is levels for PMO analysts, PMO manager and PMO directors. So you can see they've been, developed specifically for people that are working within PMO. It's not the only qualification that has been created for PMO, and that's P3O, and we'll talk about that one in a second. But the House of PMO, professional membership body, part of their offering is obviously its qualifications, and these are the four. So with the administrator level, you can see that what the three areas that it tends to focus on. And remember, this is about being able to acquire a knowledge to understand what it is that you're required to do within a PMO administration role. And it takes the thing that, that your project management knowledge needs to be there. So if the entry level qualification will focus on and does focus on something there, you might be familiar already with the term P3M. That's the shortened version for projects, programs and portfolio management. So you've got to be able to understand some of the fundamentals of those three in order to understand there's a supporting role within them, what's going to be required of you. So it has to have that foundational piece in order for us to then be able to, train the parts where it's about the competencies required to actually do the role of a PMO administrator. So it's a role that it's a training course that's very much targeted at the people that are working within that supporting environment. And when you come out of that course, what you've essentially got there is that you've got the knowledge and the understanding to undertake the role of the PMO administrator. So what it does do is starts to go into detail. So we'll take an example. One of the core competencies of a PMO administrator role would be that you get involved in supporting activities around risk management. Now, one of the things you might be doing there is helping around the risk register. So the risk register has got its, it's a log of all the different risks that have been identified on the project. Now, in order to be able to understand your role of, well, okay, so what am I doing with a risk register? What do I do with the risks themselves? What is expected of me? The course does go into, well, here are, this is what risk management is. at a project level, and goes into the ins and outs of that, in order to then put that the context of where, okay, so if I'm doing a risk register, these are the things that I would be expected to be doing with that. So it's the context of the project and the environment that you're working within, that project environment, but also, some of the tasks and activities that are required at that level. And that ultimately is the thing that had been missing for a long time when it came to training for people in PMOs, because the only thing that was really available was project management training, which it still is. And we'll talk about that in a second and how that fits in. But what was missing is like, okay, so if I go on a project management course, I'm not actually going to be delivering. I'm not going to be a project manager. So what is the expectation for me in terms of supporting? How far do I go? And, what is the expectation of a project manager on me as well? So that's the essentials for PMO administration. And I said it's kicked off. It's been 18 months, and it is going mad for PMO learning. It is become a very, very popular course, because it has managed to to give something to people that was really lacking before. Just quick question. So Suzanne, she's got working remotely. Oh, I know it's such a shame for people that are trying to build their careers, especially for me, the early days of getting into your role. It is tough. And I think yes, I think that is what has been one of the downsides of people working remotely now, is not being around other people and being able to suck in all the things that you're listening to stuff when you're hearing conversations and all that kind of thing. It just means that you have to work even harder. And they say that working at home, is it an easy option? I think the amount of people that are having so many meetings to keep in touch with each other, it is particularly difficult in order to, if I'm working in the space and I want to know more about what's going on, it is just about being able to try and be around people virtually as much as you can, which is not ideal, Suzanne, but for some people they're heading back to the office. And I think for a lot of people that might be at that stage in your career where you are trying to develop, I'd certainly take it with both hands if you have that opportunity to get back in the workplace. It's certainly going to be helpful in terms of your development, that you'll pick up from people that you're working with. I mean, project management and projects is such a people-based business. And I know, people have struggled to make that switch between moving from, the office to virtual, but, hopefully we can start to see, a reverse on that when people realize how difficult it actually is. The other options you've got is P3O Foundation. Now, P3O stands for, you can see that writing on the book there, Portfolio Program and Project Officers. Now, this first came out in 2008. It got updated in 2013. So we're already nearly 10 years old. There's no updates on the horizon. So that's, essentially P3O is, is nearly a decade old. What it does do for you and why it is such a popular course, other than it being the first PMO related course, the reason why it's still popular, it's very good at giving an overview of what PMO is and what it can be within organizations. So if you see that diagram there to the left, if you're not familiar with it already, one of the things that P3O is all about is how you have different, what's called an hub and spoke model. And essentially, this is how PMOs can be set up within an organization. So this is just one organization, by the way, with multiple types of PMOs. So just for demonstration purposes. So if you are wanting to understand more about the bigger picture of PMO, the P3O Foundation would be an option for you. I wouldn't consider the practitioner as well, where you're just getting started in the role, but the foundation course is very good at giving you that overview at that high level. If I just started working within PMO, I wouldn't do this one, because actually I would look at the PM stuff. The PM stuff would come before going down the P3O route. And it's the reason why, the essentials for PMO administrators is hitting, a lot with people, because actually it's giving them both. We've said that you have to think about the context and the environment that you're working within, whether it be projects, programs, or portfolios. But generally, by and large, most people do start at a project level. It's mainly because as you start to get to programs and project and portfolio level, it is a lot more complex. It is actually hard enough working on a project without working on a program, which is about a multiple of projects, and a portfolio, which is about a whole raft of everything that an organization is doing. So you can see why people generally start at a project level. So today, in terms of the marketplace, you might look at the APM foundational qualification, the fundamentals one there, because that is a good one, because it talks about the different tools and techniques of project management. So when it looks at risk management, it does talk about, this is how risk management works. Whereas Prince 2 is a method, and it's just one type of method, which is a waterfall method, that you might have heard that methodology name. So this is essentially a project life cycle. Now, again, Prince 2, really useful for people that have never come across a project before, and what are the components of projects and things like that. But generally, by and large, if you're new to project management completely, you wouldn't start with that either, because again, it's just about a method, and what you're trying to understand is what's the fundamentals of project management. When you ask me to look at a plan, what is a plan? How is a plan put together? All of those kind of good things. So Prince 2 doesn't do that. It just looks at the life cycle. And then, of course, you've probably heard of the phraseology around agile and agile PM, and there's lots of different variations on the theme here. But again, you might want to look at that depending on the kind of environment or organization that you are either working in or want to work for. So, agile and Scrum and all those kind of things tend to be more focused around kind of software, business related type projects. So again, if that's where you're wanting to head, you might want to consider looking at that kind of project management knowledge. So you can see, again, it comes to depending on where you're working, what their approach is. If you're not working and you're trying to break in, you tend to probably to go to more popular things like the APM qualification or Prince 2. It does, this is why I suppose over the years I've done so many careers coaching and counseling sessions for people that are in PMO, because of the options. There are different options, because PMOs are very much dependent on the organization and what kind of PMOs they want and what that PMO is there to do. And then when you know what that PMO is there to do, there's the different tasks and activities that get given to a PMO admin or a PMO analyst or whatever. So I've got a question from Joanne. She's completed a Prince 2 foundation. What course would you recommend as the next step? She said, currently working as a hybrid PMO admin and analyst role. It's a new role at the company, so a little guidance in what are the requirements of how the role can develop. So you've got a couple of options, Joanne. You can either, if they're serious about their PMO and want their PMO to develop, you might want to look at P3O Foundation, because that will give you the bigger insight into where PMO can go, what it can do, and certainly learn more about yourself from that as well, because you'll be learning about the different styles of PMOs. But equally, if you're doing a hybrid admin analyst role, you'll probably you don't say how long you've been doing it for, but you probably might get something out of the administration level, but you might want to look at the analyst level, because the analyst level is full on. So the administration level is 3 days. The analyst level, 5 days. And the reason why it's 5 days is because of the sheer amount of different support that you give and the different areas that you can get into. The role just dramatically opens up more than just doing administrative and secretariat support. So again, it really does depend where you are in terms of your confidence levels as well. But that would be my my advice. Another question, can you please advise the PMO support officer what things you should be looking to be involved with? The risk registers, the program registers, stakeholders, races, all that kind of good stuff. Again, it depends on on where you're working as well. Generally, what tends to happen with PMOs, they get set up And most organizations are trying to switch to a service-based approach in their PMOs. In other words, the organization states what they want that PMO to do. The PMO then says, yeah, we can offer these services which are essentially give you what it is that you're looking for. It's only until you start to understand, okay, so what services is our PMO offering, that you as an individual who works within that PMO can understand, right, okay, so these are the areas that we're going to be particularly working within. And to make it even more interesting, sometimes that means as a PMO analyst that you could be doing all of those things. So you could be looking at the reporting, the risk management, the benefits management, assurance, you could be doing some finance stuff, you could be doing the full lot. Or in some PMOs, what they tend to do is look at specialists. So actually we'll do, yes, I do some, you know, some administrative type support, but actually I look at and specialize around benefits management, or I specialize in risk management, you know, so there's different paths that it can go, depending on whether you want to be a specialist. But again, you take your lead to answer this question directly. You're taking your lead from what it is that the organization wants. That's how your role gets developed. It's how you know, you get the roles and responsibilities that you've got.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Are we allowed to sort of chat, or is it just?
Yeah. No, you can.
I don't know if that's appropriate or not, or if we're just
you go through it. Yeah.
Is that all right? So for the NHS, so we do agile, so it's always like reviewing. But for our PMO, we don't do delivery of programs and projects. We're really clear we're not delivery, like you said, we're more service. But I know we look at things like standardizing templates, making sure people are trying to get people to sort of come to us to use the same formats for programs, because the NHS is massive.
Yeah.
And we look at efficiencies that we can save across NHS Sussex. And so would it be a good question then to put to my team, because obviously we work remotely now, so and we're a new team that's kind of lost a lot of people and we're just building back up again. Yeah. And so we're trying to find our feet. We're kind of norming, storming and all that sort of thing at the moment. So would it be a good idea? Would that be a good question to ask? Like, what is our key? Because we offer assurances is one of our main roles. But what would be a good question to define really what it is? Because I keep looking at it and I'm like, well, what do we do as a team? We sit in PMO meetings, but I don't see, you know, questions get raised, you know, risks get raised, but it kind of goes to the program, within the program. It's just like, how do then the PMO become involved in that, and where is it appropriate for them to become involved with? Does it matter? Does that criteria of what your team should be offering need to be really strong and clear?
Yes. Okay, so there's a couple of things. I've just moved the slide deck back a bit, because you can see here what kind of things they're doing in that middle band there. Yeah, you can see the kind of, you know, they've got reporting, planning, assurance, all those kind of things. Those are what are classed to be your services. Yeah, those are your service offerings. And generally what tends to happen with a PMO is that you would ask, you know, well, what services are we offering?
Because we would kind of more review, because with the NHS we're not offering products, we're offering, it is like a service that we're continually reviewing for improvement, to see what our population needs, what we're not, you know, where the gaps are and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm taking people backwards on it, or I'm being a bit dim-witted or not, but I just wanted to sort of feel a lot. I'm quite an active, proactive person, so sometimes I feel like I'm not hands-on enough, and that's, I don't know if that's because that's part of what being a PMO is, standing back and just.
No, it's no, not at all. What we generally find with people in PMO roles is that it is very much about putting yourself forward. Then it is about, you know, where's the help required? You know, we have what we call, these are the services we offer. So this is what this PMO is there to do. Yeah, so that is a valid question. What is our PMO there to do? So PMOs generally should have, you know, what is the vision and the objective of us being here? And the way that translates then is that, okay, so if we're here to do X, that might be supporting programs, or, you know, supporting an NHS trust, or whatever it might be. From there, you're saying, in order for us to meet our objective, we have to have a certain set of services which will allow us to be able to do that. And so a service offering might be reporting, for example. So the next level down would be, okay, so what kind of reporting is required by our organization in order for the PMO to fulfill its objective? So generally what happens is that you'll have the services, and then the next level is actually something called a service catalog, believe it or not, where there is actually a catalog of services that people within your industry or your business, your organization can choose. They can choose what kind of services they want to see from the PMO. But that's where it gets tricky, because you can imagine somebody gets a service catalog and they're like, it's like me with the Argos one when I was a kid. I'll have everything, thanks. But that's the beauty of PMO, is that, well, there's only so much money, there's only so many people. So it's about getting to the nuance of what is that PMO there to do? And that comes from the organization. It comes from the senior exec. Yeah. So it's from that level that the valid question is, what is our PMO here to do? Yeah, what is the objective of it? And then from there, that's when you work out, right, in order to do that, we need to be delivering or providing X, Y, and Z. Yeah, and you can get that information. Generally, the P3O course is the good one for that, because the book itself is brilliant at, and there's an appendix in the back of it that everybody who works in PMO knows. Appendix F, like the back of their hand, because essentially what that does, it pulls out, here's a project, program, portfolio level types, and here's a list of services that you would expect to see at each one of those levels. Yeah, so what you're seeing on screen now, where it talks about, like, where it's got the hub portfolio office here, the permanent one, where it's got reporting, within the P3O manual, it goes into detail about what kind of reports you would expect to see at a project, program, and portfolio level. So it's almost like a mini service catalog. It starts to help you formulate what, you know, our PMO should be offering. But more crucially for you as an individual, it gives you some insights in, okay, so this is considered to be best practice. So I'll know that many other organizations will be doing this. So you can do a quick, a quick look at them and say, well, I can do like probably 30% of this stuff. I didn't even know that all this rest of this stuff even existed. Because that's the problem. Some of the times you're working within a certain type of PMO and you don't know what else is possible because you're working with a certain type.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're working remotely, then you're even more detached from it. So you're trying to learn and you're trying to work out what it is they're doing, and it's come quite siloed, because, like you said, there's deadlines, there's quite a lot of urgency put on what is being demanded from a PMO. And for us, we're really low staffed at the moment. Like most PMOs have like 11 just for one project. We have like 4 for the whole of NHS Sussex.
Yeah,
across the whole county. So we're so strapped at the moment. So it's just really difficult time at the moment. And I think within that, it's really difficult to identify then what it is that, I know it's assurances, but it just seems to be so whittled down at the moment because of capacity.
Yeah. It's finding what's the most important thing to our business.
The priorities, yeah.
Resources and money. What's the one thing that you want the PMO to do that will make a difference? That's where and those are kind of conversations and things you should be talking about as a team of people, whether that be 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of PMOs out there. It's just one person, so they can only do so much. So what is the most important thing?
Yeah, and as you can imagine, we've got quite a lot of different programs and portfolios of management, let alone just like having one.
Yes.
We've got multiple, so it's quite tricky.
Yeah. So another question is, what key skills should you highlight on your CV when trying to get a PMO support role? We will get in touch with you after, actually, because we have got a really cost-effective little short online course about pulling together a PMO CV, right? I created it. Like I said, I've been working in recruitment for a number of years, looked at many PMO related CVs over the years. It is good. It's £25, and you can essentially get everything that you need in order to make a brilliant PMO CV, in terms of exactly where to go, how to lay it out, what to put in the profile at the top, what kind of key skills you'll be doing, how to lay it out, the full works. You know, there's a lot of stuff already there. You can also just jump onto our blog on PMO Learning as well. There's type in CV. There is already some stuff on there as well. But for me, key skills would absolutely be around things like reporting. That's the number one thing that most people are looking for in an organization around PMO stuff. It's reporting. So if you want to extrapolate and look at what reporting might involve, you've obviously got the PC skills, so that's Word, Excel type stuff. You've got the you know, the things like the written communication, so you know, attention to detail, grammar, all of that kind of good stuff. Reporting is also about data manipulation and being able to pull together really nice visuals and tables and all that kind of stuff. Reporting is also about your interaction with people, communications. You need information from people. You're taking information from people. You're doing stuff with it, and then you're pushing it out. So there's a lot of stuff around reporting alone that you'd be able to extrapolate and pull out, well, what's the transferable skills here? Yeah.
Because there's also, isn't there also an understanding of what the programs and projects are, being able to, because there's so many, isn't there? If you're involved in your reporting on them, you've got to have an understanding of what your organisation is doing, which I guess goes back to what you said earlier, wasn't it? Having, you know, you're the kingpin for information.
Yeah. I mean, for example, when I used to recruit for PMO people, we'd talk about things like, okay, so you tell me a little bit about what I'd expect to see on your project status report. So, you know, project status report tends to be something that comes out every week. You know, just talk to me a little about, you know, what you would expect to see on that. And from a PMO point of view, what you do with that information. Yeah, so those are like specific questions that you might come across when it comes to like interview stages and stuff like that, which again, which is why, you know, it's important that you understand the project context of things. That my next question will probably be like, well, how do you get this understanding if you've not worked in a project role before? So if I get the questions about, you know, if I'm going for a project support role and I've never worked in there before, and I get a question like that, how do I deal with it? And again, you know, if you could be some inkling, some insights from your, you know, you do need that knowledge, and that is going to come through learning, whether it's formal or informal or short LinkedIn course, whatever it might be. You have to have some of that understanding of the context of what you're going to be working within. You don't, you know, people know from looking at your CV that you've not got that much. So we know that you're not going to walk through the door and be, you know, wonderful answers of, yeah, project status report has this and it, and I do this with it. We know that from the CV that you've got. What they're looking at is that, do you have the understanding of what's required? Have you done some reading up on it? And tell me a little about, well, you know, you must have done some kind of reporting before, perhaps in a job, even if you're straight out of university. Surely you have some kind of inkling around what reports are about and how they're put together and what generally tends to be in them. You know, so again, it's but if I had to pick out one, it would, you know, there has to be a really clear on the CV. It is stuff around reporting. Okay, so let's move on. So we've got career paths. Right, here we go. The world's your oyster, really, with PMO. You can see there we talked a lot about the project administrator role and where that one can go. So you go, you know, a PMO analyst is considered to be still the supporting role. And, you know, I've come across people over the years that have been PMO analyst level for their entire career, and they are absolutely brilliant at what they do. So there's no need to be moving on to manager level roles if you don't want to. PMO administrators, analysts, are very good ones, are always in demand. It's a career in its own right. It doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go on to be a PMO manager, but you can. On the left-hand side there, you can go in many places. That role can even take you right up to board level of an organization. So, you know, you can start to see where you could go with that. Over towards the kind of the top right, you're getting into, well, actually, I'd really like to try my hand at project management. actually being that delivery person, and going down that road. Again, PMO, great place to start to do that. You can also see on the bottom, in the middle, that PMO careers are not just about PMO and admin or analyst. There are other roles within project teams that PMO people do go on to do, again, depending on their interest levels and what they're really getting into. One of the emerging ones at the moment is all around data, project data analytics and stuff like that. So if you're somebody that really likes your Power BI, manipulation of data, it's going to be an exciting place to be working in projects in the future with the advance of AI technologies and all of that kind of good stuff. But other people, again, use that basis of PMO career. They either go it alone, start their own business, offering consulting services, or actually it takes them onto a BAU, business as usual role. So it is literally anywhere that you want to go with PMO if you're wanting to work within a business. Yeah, so that's just the overview. But if you look at what's in the traditional kind of career path, you can see here the 4, and there are qualifications from House of PMO at each one of these levels. So there's PMO admin, analyst, manager, and director. Now, what you're seeing here in the boxes underneath is what compels people to move onwards. Even though I said about, some analysts quite happy to stay where they are at that analyst level, that's not considered to be a bad thing. There's a lot of projects and PMOs that need great analysts. But you can see from an admin level, the kind of way that you'll start to move career-wise will be just because you do want that more responsibility, that you do want to get away from the more administrative and secretariat stuff. Let's face it, you'll always have that kind of thing, regardless of what level you work at, but it just means that you generally tend to stop being seen as the person who'll book the meeting room, the person who'll do the meeting minutes. At an analyst level, you don't tend to be doing as much of that. You might want to try different types of work. When you start to see what's possible with PMOs, we always say that you work in a current organization today, nobody has a job guaranteed for life. However, if you're very much and passionate about PMO, you'll know that you could be working anywhere, and you could be working somewhere differently in the next 2, 5, 10 years. And it's about trying to understand what else you can be doing. And that's why you look at things like House of PMO, and I hope you do go and check it out and look at and consider buying that portfolio, the competency framework, because that gets into the detail of what is actually required at each one of these levels. And it will open your eyes, just as it would if you looked at the P3O manual and I was talking about the different things that you expected to do at a project program and portfolio level. It really will open your eyes. And I think this is the thing about the fact that PMOs are different in different organizations, is knowing that, okay, you're working within a PMO today, it will have limitations, because not every PMO gets involved in finance, for example. Not every PMO gets in touch, gets involved in benefits management, or, as Suzanne was saying, they're limited by what they're doing because of how much time they've got or resources or whatever it is. So you'll be missing out on certain tasks and activities just because the PMO you're working with today doesn't have those. But again, if you're passionate about PMO, you'll be interested in looking at, well, what is there? What am I missing out on? I might not be using it today, but I want to know it. I want to know that it exists and what it means. And also, bigger and more complex projects is ultimately what drives and compels people. If you've got, a really risky, high profile project, it's exciting. Yes, it's stressful sometimes, but that's the beauty of being a PMO admin role. You're very much in the thick of it. And sometimes you do become that person that, everybody comes and talks to you. You're the person that, generally knows what's going on. And, it can feel a very nice team role. And again, you can see, I'm not going to go into detail on every single level of role there, but with the analyst one, it's the same thing. You can generally move on because of all of those same reasons for the admin one. But actually, we've talked about you can become specialized. You just become known as that PMO analyst. They're just great with plans. Go and talk to such and such over there if you've got a problem with your planning or risk or something like that. So people become known within their business for being specialized in something. And again, with a PMO analyst, you might want to work in a different type of PMO. Most popular type of PMO in the UK today is a program management office. More popular than projects, probably more a sign of the times that more organizations are doing more projects, and projects, some of them get collected together to form a program. Maybe it's because of that, or perhaps it's more likely that a PMO is required when you start having multiple projects. That's probably why the program management one is still the most popular type. However, the portfolio one is becoming more and more frequent. And again, a sign of the times that organizations are doing more projects. And again, when you do more projects, you've got to get your arms around a lot more stuff. And that's why portfolio management is becoming more popular. So again, you might want to think about, from a career point of view, you might work project, program, portfolio, or actually you go straight into working at a program level. So we talked about understanding projects, which you still need to understand, but equally you need to understand a little bit more about program management as well. So again, you can see how it depends on the opportunity you get or the place where you're working now, kind of helps to form where your early development might be. But again, if I'm talking to you in 10 years time and you've been working in PMO all that time, I know for a fact you're going to be somewhere completely different mindset about your development and where you want to go next. That's the beauty of it. And again, you can get into that management level. You can go there. It's got a very clear path up to a manager level. So it's possible, if that's where you get your kicks, that you love people, working with people and want to bring people on and all that kind of stuff. It's that that possibility is there. Quick question about key differences between portfolio and program management. Okay, so program management generally is a collection of projects, each with a project manager, each possibly with a PMO administrator. And at program level, what you're doing is working with a program manager who is collectively looking after all of those projects. So if you imagine that all the work that's going on at a project level, they have to report upwards to the program to tell them what's going on, what's progress, what's going on. If this project here slightly late, it's going to have a knock-on effect to this one over here. All of those kind of like interdependency type stuff happens at a program level. So if you're working in a PMO at a program level, your role changes slightly because you're looking at different things. So your reporting tends to be, what is happening at all this project level? What's the exceptions? What do we need to know about? What stuff can we leave that project manager to deal with? What are these things that are getting flagged up that are going to have a knock-on effect to the overall objective of the program? So it's very much still a delivery thing. Portfolio level, you're that next step up. So you don't actually get involved in the day-to-day support of projects. You're not even getting involved in the day-to-day support of programs. At a portfolio level, it's very much about what projects are we choosing to do in our business. So our business has got a strategy. It wants to achieve X or Y over the next year or 2 or 5. It has to choose how it's going to force those changes through. So it'll have projects and programs that are aligned with the strategic objectives. And it's up to the portfolio and the portfolio management processes to choose which projects are we going to do and when, and how many resources are we going to need over, not just now, but over the next 2, 5 years or whatever it might be. So it's very much a more forward planning, more business related role than it is delivery, hands-on delivery. So you can see where, it's all connected, all very much about, we're in the business of change management ultimately, so it's all to do with changing the business, but we just have a slightly different focus on what we're doing around those changes. And again, the PMO role changes depending on that level that you're working at. All right. So we have talked about there's 2 fundamental things that you need to be having in order to get on, and that is that project management or program management or portfolio management, but also what's expected of you. You can go and have a look at any job advert, whether you're working somewhere now or not, and go and have a look at the comparison of, these are the variations of what you'll see out there. I guarantee that reporting will be in that top 2 or 3 things that people are asking for. So you pretty much know that in order to get on well within PMO, you need to be able to report and report well. And that means PC skills. And that doesn't just mean Excel these days. There's a lot of different types of PPM tools out there. Things like MS Project still gets used, but there's also a whole raft of different types of things. But now what is becoming more popular, people still use Excel, but they're using Power BI to make sure, to bring that data to life. So it is very much a reporting based job. So becoming a PMO administrator, there's your things that you'll need to be looking at, which is the essential knowledge, essentially. And we've talked about training courses that can offer that, but also, there's a lot on our blog. Please do get on to, and have a look at, the different things that we've been writing there about these roles. There's a lot there. You've got to have that understanding around projects, programs, and portfolios and PMOs. So again, we've just talked really briefly with some of the questions that we got. But please, do go away and have a look at, just knock it into Google. What's the definition of a project? What's the definition of a program? What's the definition of portfolio? And away you go down a rabbit hole for the next hour. You've got to be able to understand what those core expectations are around these roles as well. And again, there's a lot of information out there about what's to be expected. We talked about competencies, knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Please do go and check out House of PMO's website. Again, a lot of stuff on there that will be helping you formulate your thinking. Also, we touched on PMO services. We talked about the services that PMO offers. That is what helps you to understand what's expected of you and the kind of tasks and activities you would do depending on the services that your PMO is offering. And also just about, the one thing that, if you're serious about working in PMO, the one thing that you've got to be committed to is your learning. And I don't mean about going on training courses. It means that there's a lot of stuff that will always be coming down the line, always. So you have to be a person that's really interested in learning, really interested and nosy. I did a session last week, actually. And I think what we'll try and do is pull out the session that I did, which was the top 5 things that make a great PMO administrator. Now that session was done by House of PMO. I think what we'll do is we've got your details. We'll do a follow-up to this session, let you know when the recording's out, share this deck with you. We'll also put that one on there for you as well, because there's a lot of stuff in there that is very applicable to the kind of things you've been working and talking through today, that I think you'll be really interested in. So just finally from me is there are things coming up. You can see already for the fully booked ones, it's the essentials for PMO. They are very, very popular. We've got more dates on the website. Please do go and check them out. But that's what's coming up. That's the kind of thing that PMO Learning is doing. We'd love to obviously see you in a classroom. But please, if you've got any questions, get in touch. More than happy to help. Charles, you're always around and happy to help people with any questions and queries. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put my details in the chat as well, so that you got those there.
Okay, so have we got any final questions? I'm gonna bombard you afterwards with the with this recording, this deck, and like I said, the other one, which I think will might be of interest to you. We'll be doing more lunches and learns. But in terms of follow-ups, if you are wanting to get into PMO and you're not in a PMO role at all, one of the things you also might want to consider is that I do careers coaching one-to-one for an hour. So if that's something that you're really struggling with and you can't seem to break in, don't struggle, have a look at it. It might be useful to you. But that's it from me. Thank you very much. I'm now off to get lunch. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks. See you soon. Bye-bye.